Yo. Happy New Year. Welcome back, everyone. How's everyone on this very cold morning? It was -6 here when I woke up, which is very cold for London. And I left the window open in our apartment last night, so I walked out into the kind of living area and it was like a fridge. So it took all my motivation to get here today. But we're here. And the heat is on. So we made it. We made it. So yeah, first stream back. I'm gonna work on a study. Depending on how the study goes, I might work on it for longer than the first hour. I've been really wanting to paint like a sort of a kind of misty forest kind of setting. I've just been thinking about it the last few days, and there's some techniques that I wanted to try out that I haven't done for a little while as well. So yeah, we're just gonna have a play around. I'll show you some stuff. Swoo Moon, thanks for the follow. Cool. Yeah, I'll jump into it. And of course, as usual, like if there's any like questions as we go along, anything like that, then yeah, feel free, shout them out. We'll get into it. But yeah, I hope everyone's good. It's good to be back. Nice to have a good break. Had a proper relaxed, so that's cool. Alrighty. Well, let's jump in. And yeah, I know I look like a Bene Gesserit right now. But it's so cold in here, I need to have my hood on. It's not a bad look. Alright. Let's get into it then. So yeah, misty forest study to start with, and then yeah, if it's going well, then I'll just continue that. And if it's not going well, then I'll jump onto the main project image that we started at the end of last year and continue on with that. So be interesting to look at that again. I've not looked at it since we finished it. Well, not finished it, since we left it. So be interesting to see how much I hate it when we look back at it. I hope you had a great holiday, mate. In the last stream, you were feeling quite under the weather. Are you feeling better now? Yeah. I was. I was just like really, really tired. Proper rundown from the year, and then obviously the streaming kind of takes quite a bit of energy out of you, and obviously Daisy being away as well. Everything was just a bit too much, you know. So really needed a bit of a proper rest and like just, you know, not try and do too much. I think I was just trying to like do too much to fill my time, and yeah, crashed out. But yeah, much better now, thank you. Thanks for asking, that's very kind of you. Alright, so I've got this reference image here. You know, as usual with these studies, the idea for me is to make like a stylized version of what I'm looking at. I'm not intending to copy this 100%. I'm just using this as like a guide for a painting. So I will color pick from it a little bit, and I'm basically just trying to use it as inspiration, as if it was like a memory of a place rather than the study itself. And yeah, I'm going to use a variety of different like techniques for this one. Back in the day, when I first started digital painting, I was using the custom shape tool quite a bit to basically replace drawing. No, but I'll show you how it works. But it's really good for saving shapes that you like in a library, and the way that you use them is kind of a little bit different than making a brush, and it just gives you a little bit more, I want to say like freedom. It just gives you another way of using shapes, specifically shapes that you can take from anything. Like you can take them as a selection from a photo or anything like that. And for something like this, where you have lots of trees, very kind of complicated shapes, but you want to stylize it, the custom shape tool can be a really good place to start, especially if you're kind of new to this. Yeah, there was an artist that went by the name of Sparth. Sparth. And he did a lot of like these very sort of clean sci-fi landscapes, you know, on planet, off planet, and the custom shape tool was like one of the main things that he was using. And I learnt this technique from watching his videos back in the day. And yeah, I still use parts of this today. But yeah, I haven't done it for a while, so I thought it'd be fun to get back into. So yeah. Hello, Jewel, and hello, Castonia. Hello, I'm not the first time looking like a stalker. I know, you're slacking. You slacking. Ace beat you today. Okay. So, custom shapes. I'll show you how it works. First of all, let's set up this canvas a little bit. Can I make this slightly more widescreen? Just to start with. Do like it cinematic, you know? Yeah, I think the cold weather has just like made me really want to paint like a misty scene. It's got into my brain. So yeah, I'll briefly show you the custom shape tools. So if you go here, right, usually I think it's on default, maybe on the line or rectangle tool. But anyway, it's here. If you hold down on it, you get custom shape tool, right? Sick, custom shapes, right? Here, you make sure it's set to pixels, and you have this little icon, right? And there's a few presets in here already, right? Let's take this one, a camel, and I'm on a new layer, and basically it's, you know, it's a shape that I can pull out, right? And it makes the shape that you had. So this is different from a brush, obviously, because you get a nice hard clean shape, and what you have noticed as well, when I pull this out, like, I can actually, you know, to a certain extent manipulate the proportions by just selecting it differently. And where the real kind of fun with the custom shape tool comes in is actually not necessarily using the shapes as they are intended. So like, I don't need to make camels out of this. And this is what Sparth was doing quite a bit, to give yourself a ground plane or a wall plane or a sky that is in perspective and has random detail that you didn't intend because you're using like a camel shape. So for example, if I like stretch one of these out like this, and I sort of build out a kind of shape selection over it, like this. What I can start to do, by virtue of like these shapes kind of shrinking down and into each other, you can create something like a ground plane that you could paint into, because it has a very small amount of variance and sort of random detail in it. And you can put these on different layers if you want to manipulate them further. But essentially, something like this, right, is a selection. And if I lock this and then take, you know, like a noisy brush inside of it, you know, paint into it a little bit, something like this, and I was to do something similar behind it, you know, let's say these are puddles or something and they're reflecting the sky. You can very quickly start to get shapes that you can work with inside of that give you, yeah, a texture that mimics, say, like a ground plane in this instance, you know, with puddles. And I could take this even further, like make it more detailed. Right, if I shrink this down and duplicate it, for example, let's flip this one, and so on. You can see how this would be useful for creating complicated surfaces, and specifically random surfaces, because if you were to draw this stuff out, you'll make very similar strokes, you know, to how you usually do, over and over and over again, really. So it's a very nice way to do this. And it's a very quick way to build up a landscape out of flat shapes that then you can paint inside of. So that's essentially what we're going to do here. But I'm also going to use it to make some custom tree shapes. Sorry, I'll go over it a few times, don't worry. The stream was stuck. Yeah, no worries. I'll go over it a few times because I'm going to be doing it throughout this image, so don't worry about it. So I'll show you how to create a custom shape, and then I'm going to create a few custom shapes, and then I will kind of build out this composition and kind of paint inside of it and sort of show you how that process would work. Like I said, it's very cool. It's very quick. And if you look up Sparth's work, like I can grab a few images right now just to show you. Sparth artist. Okay, this guy, I'll bring up a few images, but this guy's like the master of the custom shape tool. And it might have even been in Imagine FX magazine back in the day, where I had seen it. I also remember seeing like a video as well at some point. But yeah, his style is very sort of clean and you know, exact, but yeah, he would layer up the custom shapes in the way I just showed you, loads, and he does like all sorts of sci-fi and so on and so forth. His images are very like iconic back in the day, but he would be making like custom shapes from you know, photos of buildings, you know, interesting textures and so on. You can see how like this would be the selection of, say, the lights on a building as a custom shape, and then, you know, he would go back in and sort of use the straight line tool and cut into them and simplify them. You know, you could use this same buildings thing and stretch it this way to make the ground plane, and you can just, he'd build up all of the images like this. Very interesting technique, and yeah, we're going to explore it today because if, like me, you're not really an environment artist at all, like you have to paint them, but it's not the main thing that you do. It could be a really helpful technique for you, so we'll go with it. Hello, new stream. Yes, welcome back, Izzy. We're back in the new year. We're getting on. Okay, so let's define some shapes. Because this is a Blue Peter here, I have these basic tree kind of shapes here, and I'm going to turn these into some custom shapes to save in our library, and then we'll go from there. So I'll just break all of these out into their own layers. And we'll use these shapes to build up the composition. Like I said, you can do this with a brush, right? Yo, Jimmy, what's up? Yeah, you can use photos, right, and select stuff out, and the process would be the same, but basically what you need is a path. These edges on these trees, I already know they're going to be like too detailed to yo, Jimmy. Yeah, the VODs are all saved on YouTube. If you go to the About section on Twitch here, there should be a link to YouTube. All the VODs for the streams are saved on there afterwards, because Twitch deletes them after a couple of weeks. But yeah, on YouTube, they are there. I'm also streaming this live to YouTube as well, so if for any reason Twitch isn't working properly, you can watch on YouTube. I'm just not keeping an eye on the YouTube chat, so if anyone's talking on YouTube, I have no idea, but yeah, it's all there. So yeah, if I'm making a path from this, unless I go around with the pen tool, like this, and select it out, the path that I get is not going to be as detailed as this. This is kind of a bit too much, unless I customly do it. All right, just to bear that in mind. But if I select this tree, so just Control click, and it's now selected, and I just go on the rectangular lasso, and right click this, it's gonna go make work path. Okay, so it then brings up this little checkbox. You can only put in numbers between like 0 and 0.5 and 10. Only goes up to 10. 10 is like less detail, and 1 is as much detail as it can have. So I've got 0.5 selected, and when I do this, you see here, it's going to make a path as best it can. Like I said, this is too detailed, but it should be alright for what we're doing. It doesn't need to be like as detailed as these images. But you can see here, it's glossing over some of the detail, but it's not really going to make a difference here. So now this is, I have the path. If I then click on the custom shape tool, which is this little like Pokemon Ditto looking thing, and go to edit, define custom shape. Okay, click on define custom shape. It's going to ask me if I want to name it. Let's call that Fir Tree 1. I click OK. Alrighty. So, let me, one sec, let's get rid of my selection here. So now if I go on the custom shape tool and I click here, my new selection is saved here. And now I have Oh, it's in white. Now I have my shape. Like I said, it's not as detailed as this because the path selection won't allow me to unless I make a custom path. It only goes down to a certain level of detail, but this is going to be more than enough for our study. And now, yeah, I have this tree shape that I can use however I want. For example, like I was showing before, can make like a sort of a ground plane with detail and perspective in it for free, basically. Just dragging this shape out. You know, I can do something like this. You see how this could be used in a landscape, and then obviously I can use that shape and do whatever I want with it more. So it's very custom like that. Warp it however you like. So I'm just going to make the rest of these trees really quick. I'll go through the process again if anyone like missed it first time. But yeah, I'm going to do these 4 trees. So first thing, select it. Then select your rectangular shape tool or just any of the other shape tools. Right click, make work path. Set this to 0.5 if you want it as detailed as it will go. You can have it less detailed and make a less detailed shape, which could also help for more stylized stuff, or if you just don't want the amount of detail that you've got. Yep, I'm going to click OK. This makes a path. Going to go on Custom Shape Tool, Edit, Define Custom Shape. Call this for... can't spell. For tree 2. Okay. Nice. Now, that's that tree. I'll do this 2 more times. Sorry for the repetition, but I know what I'm like if I'm trying to follow instructions. I need to hear it a few times. So let's do this one. So control click, selected the tree, rectangular selection, right click, make work path, set tolerance to 0.5, and then custom shape tool, edit, define custom shape for tree 3. Boom. Okay. Now, last one. Sing it with me now. Control click, rectangular selection tool. There she goes. She knows. She knows. She's got it already. Sing it with me. For tree 4. I can briefly show you what this process would look like if you were to use a photo and you wanted a particular selection. Let me grab a reference photo. I'll show you what that would be. Right. I'm just trying to find something that was reminiscent of what we saw on some of those sparse images. Skyscrapers. Sunlight. Yeah, it's quite interesting as well because you can mess around with the selection to get something, you know, kind of unintended, which can also be quite cool. Okay, Let's see. Okay, so I have this, and like I quite like the way the sun's hitting it, right? The sun's hitting the building. Like I could make it. Maybe I could use these shapes somewhere. So what I'm gonna do is like knock this down with the curves. So I just have the light. Let's say. Actually, hang on. Yeah, actually, how's this gonna do it with this? Yeah, so here, I really like this. This will be a handy piece. So I've done this with the pen tool here already. So it's already a selection. It's already a path, right? Then I'm going to edit, define custom shape. Oh, what I have omitted here actually. This is why I wouldn't want to do it with pen tool just here. Let's go. Select color range. I want to select the darks here. Actually, yeah, I want to select the darks. And then make a path from that. Make work path. 0.5. Bomb. Okay. And yeah, you know, you can build up a sort of a library of shapes to use in your sort of Lego box here. You could also like select the inverse when you make the selection, or just invert this selection. On this, and then yeah, you can use the shapes. But yeah, look it up. It's good fun. Anyway, so that being said, now I have all these. Let's get rid of this one. Delete shape. Okay. I'll also get rid of this one. Okay, doesn't want to delete that one. Doesn't matter. So yeah, now I have like all of these in here, and yeah, because you can mess around with the proportions of them, like you can get a small amount of variance out of each shape so that it doesn't feel so stamped. Obviously, if you made a brush out of this, you could get a little bit of opacity and all sorts of other stuff with it. But what you don't get with the brush is the ability to like stretch out and use these shapes to build up surfaces, and so on. So, alrighty. Are we following? We're following so far. So, let's see. Let's see about building up this composition. It's as usual. Like I'll always start doing this with a small, rough drawing, just to give myself some landmarks and stylize some of the shapes that I have right here. So. One sec. Gotta stay hydrated. See, I like this curve of the river kind of coming in, and you know, this essentially the composition already is quite nice in his. You know, that's why I chose this photo. But I will kind of emphasize the shapes a little bit more. But I do like, you know, this clearing and this river coming in. So we'll try and keep that general flow. You know, I might try and, yeah, I'll probably mess around with the exact composition of that, but that's essentially what I kind of like about this already. And I'll try and work with that and sort of simplify, stylize the shapes a little. It'd be quite interesting here to have this like elevation change as well. You know, that kind of rock formation thing going in there. To sort of roughly indicate where certain things are for myself. I'm going to sort of, yeah, stylize the shape of this stuff quite a bit. And I can sort of talk a little bit about how I intend to do that, but I'm trying to sort of push the shapes a little bit more and sort of simplify them down into leading lines. Kind of, you could almost, I think it's helpful to talk about it in terms of energy. You know, simplify the implied angle that things are at and sort of direct the eye, or direct the energy that these lines are having, and like converge them together. You know, if yo Ace, thanks for the sub, that's very kind of you, much appreciated. We are on 2 subs right now. It's a very exclusive club with 0 benefits. Yeah. Oh yeah. Oh, there are some old emotes. I forgot about that. But yeah, thank you. I appreciate that. So yeah, I was saying energy, right? It can be a little bit daunting to look at an environment and be like, what is he talking about? Where is this energy? Okay. And I think it takes some practice to really get into your mind. But it is just simplification, and I think how you interpret the real world and how good you are at making artwork based on that is how well that you can simplify what you're looking at to then recreate elsewhere. And so when I look at this photo, I try and not see the detail. I try and like look at it as if I had Vaseline in my eyes. So if I did like filter noise, dust and scratches on this, and I did it like this is how I'm trying to look at the picture. And then what I'm trying to see is kind of like a really bad edge finding software. I'm trying to see like what direction and what way certain edges and lines are going in the image, and like certain contrasts. And when I'm stylizing something, I'm trying to recreate this collection of lines, or what I like to call like energy, in a certain direction. So as you can see here, when the photo is very detailed, you know, like this, it's harder to see these flows, if you like. But if you drop the detail out quite a bit, you can start to sort of get an impression of like edges and flows lining up. Like the top of this, and this could be thought of as sort of one shape, you know. This this sort of form of the land, like this, sort of coming up to a peak and moving over. So with practice, looking at stuff, and try and break this down, and like, if I have to turn this into, 10 lines, what do those 10 lines look like? Alakadeva Art, thanks for the follow. Sorry if I butchered your name there. And good morning, Brandon Crampton. So yeah, this is what I'm sort of looking at. And when I'm trying to do a stylization study in particular, this is kind of my underpinning, the thing that I'm trying to like follow throughout. So it's, I said, it take a little while to sink in and do, but the more you do it, the more you'll see it, and it will become a little bit more second nature. Then there's other stuff that goes into this, obviously, like making sure that you don't have tangents where they're not necessary, making sure that your curves and lines are interesting. You're not kind of lining up verticals and horizontals to the frame. So all these other things that come into play, but yeah, the beginning just starts with making shapes. So making that impression. Do you ever do figure drawing as a warm-up? The energy concept seems to overlap quite a bit with your explanation of simplifying this landscape. Never thought of it that way. Yeah, for the most part, I try and do studies on things that I can't do that well, and my figures are at a much better place than my landscapes, and landscaping is environment painting is something that I want to do a bit more of and just get better at. So it is kind of more of the focus of my studies at the moment. But yeah, I do the same with figures. Like, this is the entire reason that I do it this way, is to try and merge those processes. Like painting figures and painting landscapes can be and should be, for me, the same process. So I'm trying to do them the same. That was perfect, and glad to be here. I first found your art on ArtStation. Have a good one, everyone. Thank you very much. Thanks for joining. Thanks for commenting. Okay. Yeah, so a couple of other things here before I start building up shapes, but just to go into like how, simplifying and stylizing, right? And that is, I mentioned verticals and horizontals. So here, we have these trees like this, and they're all like slightly, wiggly. This one's quite straight. And there's horizontal surfaces, or areas that are kind of horizontal in here, right? Now the thing is, in nature, these things, as you can see in the photo, they're not quite vertical and horizontal. They're all a little bit wiggly, a little bit off. And this makes the scene feel very natural. Now, when we're copying stuff, when we look at things and we simplify, we tend to find patterns. And a lot of the time we will align things vertical and horizontal as we remember them simply, and they don't need to be like that. So if I was to draw these shapes in here and do all of the tree trunks vertical and then like all of these horizontals horizontal, my recreation of this, a stylized version of it, would be so rigid looking and so sort of uncanny and out of place. It'd feel really fake and weird and like not very nice. because it's just kind of a bit uncanny. So even in my initial sketch here, what I'm trying to do is make sure that I emphasize the sort of difference in the curvature of these lines, so that I'm not having stuff line up horizontally and vertically to the frame everywhere. It doesn't mean that some things can't, and for focus on an area you might want to do it, but if you do it everywhere it's going to stiffen up the image loads. And the other thing is parallels, right? So let me just erase these red lines. Parallel lines. So here, you know, I have this sort of perception of the top of the tree line. I have this hillside and I have this edge coming through here. And then similarly, this kind of like perception of that tree line through here, this through here, you know, whatever, something like this, or even this edge. Again, this works in the same way as like parallels, as verticals and horizontals. The spacing of these is relatively similar, and they're all parallel to each other. So if I was again to sort of copy that directly into this, as well as having the verticals, you can see how stiff that would make this entire study. And so it's always something in my mind when I'm doing a stylization study like this, is to sketch my thing down, but then look at my sketch and go, have I created parallels? Have I created verticals and horizontals to the frame? And where can I, you know, alter these lines so that they don't converge that way? So for example, here I have this smaller gap, larger gap, larger gap. So I have this difference here, whereas, you know, here it was like this. And this is part of the, you know, how to stylize, but obviously how to keep the energy and stuff going through something like this. I'm sort of almost imagining there is a convergence point for these lines, like down here, so that they all go in that direction and they sort of curve into each other. And this will give the piece a little bit more life and a bit of energy later on. Okay. And hello, Uber. Welcome. Welcome, welcome. Right. So, enough blabbing. I have my sort of rough plan. So what I'm now going to do is just using the custom shapes that we defined earlier, and just some, you know, lasso shapes that I make. I'm going to build out in layers my stylized version of this, so that we have, an interesting composition, but that all the shapes are separate. They're on their own layer, so that I can paint inside of them and behind them and in front of them. And that's how we're going to build up the sort of atmosphere and the texture and the mist and everything, hopefully. I say this, if I can't pull it off, I'll just turn the stream off. But that's the general plan. So I've got my little sketch. I'll keep this kind of at low opacity underneath everything, and I'll start building up some shapes. I wouldn't advise doing this as well as trying to do the colors from eye as well. I would practice. I would practice color and picking colors separately from doing something like this, unless you're some kind of masochist. Like this really isn't the best idea. So I will be color picking from this image, but like I said, that the point of this is not to copy the image, but to show you how to do this custom shapes thing. Maury, amazing vibes here. Thanks. Welcome. And I much appreciate it. We need at least one camel. Yeah, I'll put the camel in there. Don't worry. So, starting this, what I would recommend, or at least this is the way that I go about doing this, is to start from back to front and using the shapes build the composition forward. In this way you're managing your layers properly from the start, but it also it kind of helps to think about the image broken up in that way, and really sort of think about what's in front of what and where it needs to be and so on. And you do yourself a lot of favors by structuring it that way. If you just start going in like randomly, like start with this tree on the right and so on, yeah, you're gonna run into some issues. Or at least I do, because something like this ends up being quite complicated in the end. Like there's a lot of trees going on, for example. So this at the very back here is my sky. That's going to sit behind everything. Let's make the sketch layer red. We'll stick it up here, and then let's get rid of all of that stuff and put it in a little folder up there. Sorry, management. That could be my explanations layer. Put my ref on blue. Okay, cool. I usually put my sky on blue actually, so let's put the ref on orange. Okay, we're in. Yeah, I always make the sky blue on these. So, dirt. All right. So next layer up, this kind of background bank of trees here that's going to sit behind everything. And what I'll do is like that's going to go across all the way over here and all the way behind here, so that as the shapes layer up, there's stuff behind them, and then yeah, you know how that works. And I'm going to try and sort of follow my sketch here a little bit. So custom shape time. Select my custom shape tool. I'm going to grab one of these trees that we had. Okay, ooh. Yeah, cool. I'm going to grab that color, and yeah, let's start building up a little bit of tree shape back here. And also what's going to be important here is to, limit some detail. So what I might do is, once I put a few of these in, it's like a raise into a little bit of this, but also I might even use the dust and scratches kind of filter to take some detail out. So let's get a different tree in here as well. So we got some different shapes. Actually, let's avoid that one. He's quite detailed. Let's go with this dude. And like, I don't need to use all of them. So you can see here, I'm like closing up some of the shapes, right? At the bottom. You see this is kind of like a solid bank, right? So I don't need all those like tiny details in there. I just need sort of the tree tops themselves, and not much else. So I can use some of these shapes to like basically block out large areas that we're not going to see so much of. And then where I want like a little tree detail coming out, I'll do this. Did you go to art school? I'm about to graduate in like 2 weeks, and I feel like it hadn't added anything to me. I did go to an atelier. So I did university, and I did like product design, technical drawing, and then after that I went to an atelier to do like oil painting and drawing, which is really where I learned most of what I know. Not Photoshop, but how to paint, how to draw, and all of the stuff that goes along with that. An atelier school, like when I went to university, I didn't know that I wanted to be an illustrator. Like, I didn't even know that concept art existed or anything. So, but once I knew that that existed, I was then like, well, actually, don't know how to draw or paint, so I need to go somewhere that teaches that. And so I went to what was then the London Atelier of Representational Art, or LARA, in London, which is unfortunately closed down now. Closed during COVID, but yeah, that's where I went. And I studied there for a few years, and then once I graduated there, I taught there for a while afterwards. And while I was teaching there, I was also working in a bar in the evenings, and I was teaching myself how to use Photoshop and like make a portfolio for getting into the games biz. So I actually didn't end up. I got my junior position when I was. Let me think about this. When I was probably about 26, 27, is when I got my first junior position in games. Okay, so this should be enough for our very, very background layer right here. We'll see, but that should work. So now I'm going to like see if I can build up kind of this area here with some custom shapes. Obviously, we're going to paint inside all of these at some point. We're going to sort of make them sit together much nicer than they are. There's going to be mist and so on. So right now it's going to look really like hard-edged and a bit rubbish. And then later, hopefully, I'll make it look less rubbish. But I can't promise. Did you go to the atelier with the idea of doing concept art, or did you just want to become an illustrator? I went to the atelier with the idea of learning to draw to become a concept artist. And then once I had got a job as a concept artist as a junior, and I was doing that for a while, I actually then realized that I actually didn't really enjoy concept art so much, that it was actually illustration for games that I enjoyed. But I sort of had it confused, where I thought that concept art was going to be a lot more like what turned out to be illustration. Like production art and art for games, that concept art for games, isn't much like a lot of the stuff that you see on ArtStation. Like ArtStation is very like polished a lot of the time, and you know, I have done work that has been production art, and then has, you know, they've asked for it to be worked on again because it's going to go in like an art book or get shown on ArtStation. So like the production artwork is very rough and like kind of half finished because it serves a purpose, and then you move on to the next thing. And then a lot of the time stuff gets polished up for ArtStation or art books, and most of the production art never gets seen. And when I sort of realized that after working, I was like, oh, okay, I actually think I prefer illustration then, because I want to make like finished pieces. And obviously coming from that sort of atelier background, drawing and painting was very much something I was doing all the time. So yeah, that's how that kind of changed. But it took a few years for that to sort of play out. Oh yeah, we back. What's up, Dan? How you doing, mate? Welcome. Interesting. Yes. Took me taking a concept art mentorship to realize the illustrator side of me. Tell stories via illustrations is what is illustrations what it always was, I guess. Yeah, same. Like I think I just had assumed concept art was illustration, I guess, in my mind, or at least that concept art was more akin to illustration, and it's actually, illustration itself is quite different from concept art in terms of the way you work and what's required and the time scales you have and stuff like that. It's not that I think concept art's bad or anything. It just wasn't what I thought. It wasn't what I thought it was going to be. And so, yeah, that was it really. But yeah, I learned a lot of cool things as a concept artist that I don't regret. I don't regret that stuff at all. Like, I learned a ton of stuff. But yeah, my naivety at the time, I was just like, oh, wait a minute, pretty pictures. And there wasn't ArtStation at the time, but there was similar stuff around where you'd see like a lot more sort of polished artwork and so on. So it was... Whoops. So, sorry, now I've just quickly pop onto what I'm showing here. So I've been using the custom shapes, right, to plop some information down. And now I'm using those shapes as like one larger shape and just sort of warping them around and messing with them to get a few more sort of layers in. Like I said, you can basically ignore the colors of these right now because they are really just here as shapes. Later on we're going to work with the mist and the edges of them to plop them all together. Right now I'm just trying to build up the composition with some shapes, some interesting shapes, and stuff that passable as the forest. This could be a good opportunity to use some of the animals in here as well. I promise I'll get a camel or two in here. Promise. Yeah, I don't really like the tricks used to work faster that's necessary in concept art, like photo bashing. Takes the fun out of it, I think. I mean, fair enough. Everyone's got their own taste for stuff. Like, I really enjoyed learning to photo bash and integrate 3D and all that kind of stuff. Like, I think, at least for me, it was great to learn that stuff, and I use a lot of those techniques. This is one of those techniques that I learned at that time for building up detail in illustrations, and this is essentially photo bashing, right? So they're useful techniques, absolutely. And like I said, I use a 3D in my work, Sometimes I use photo textures. It's just that you wouldn't necessarily know where that stuff is because I can integrate it quite well, but it is helpful. It's just impossible for me to be able to paint everything that I need to, and no one wants to pay me for like 3 weeks to paint something that has like a ton of ellipses and is super complicated that I could just make a basic 3D model of and paint over. The results the same, and yeah, I don't know. I think you might feel differently about it at a certain point in time, but I'd be open to all new techniques. You never know how it's gonna help you. 2-minute warm-up sketch. Yeah, sickly took me a week. Is there a lot of illustration that goes on during production to give the team a more clear picture, or is it promotional art, things like that? Yeah, I mean, you can come across projects where illustration is used more in the way that sort of concept art gets used, as in like you're making illustrations that are informing the look and stuff like that. Those projects do exist. They're fairly few and far between, I gotta say. Like, it's not something that you'll see super regularly. But I've worked on projects like that, and yeah, it's quite fun. A kind of illustration as a more of a what's the word? Illustration more as concept art in a way, but still retaining like what's good about illustration. Yeah, that stuff does exist. Faux show. But mostly it's like promotional art, splash artwork, loading screens. Sometimes you do things for presentations. They need an artwork that like sums up certain gameplay, gameplay things, and so on, and they need a custom artwork for that, and so on. So, but yeah, there's all sorts of uses. Like there's all sorts of different kind of types of illustration that you would do. You can see here I'm just warping some of these shapes as well, because obviously if you're stamping the same shape around all the time, yeah, our eyes are pretty good at picking up like the shape and so on. So sometimes you're going to want to mess with it quite a bit, warp it, or even just use like portions of it and not the entire thing. Just so again you're customizing your custom shape tool. Because it's a bit like having a stamp brush, right? It can get pretty repetitive pretty quickly. And obviously you can use a solid brush as well to paint back into them, or a non-solid brush. It's really up to you. And a lot of the time I'll make these trees on a separate layer, because every time you put a custom shape down, it just does it on the same layer. Like all of these layer up and they're one shape. So if you want a bit more control, which I do, then I put them on separate layers, and then I'll merge them back down. Back down again when I don't need them. Alright, give me a second. I'm just going to save this. I'm quickly going to go to the bathroom. I'll just leave you on be right back. I'll be 5 minutes. Yo, I'm back. I just looked outside. It's snowing outside. So that's going to make my cycle home pretty interesting. I'll tell you that for free. Okay. Let's get back. Where'd I put my pen? There we go. Crisis averted. But yeah, obviously going back to photo bashing or whatever. Obviously, if you don't like those kind of techniques, then yeah, whatever. It's up to you. But I think personally, like, learning all of those techniques really helped. Yeah, it really helped me at certain stages. You know, in ways that I wouldn't really have predicted. So certainly helped to speed up certain things in illustration. Yeah, which was very helpful. And obviously, like, learning a bit of 3D was quite fun. Yeah, doing the photo bashing and all those kind of techniques is very similar to what I'm doing right now, really. And there is quite a knack to it. I think people tend to think that photo bashing is really easy, and it's actually not. It's actually quite difficult to do it well. And there's a lot of bad photo bashing out there, which, you know, I think people see and then, oh, hang on, what's going on with my music here? It's okay. Yeah, there's a lot of bad photo bashing out there, which, or just sort of real shameless photo bashing out there, should I say, that gives it all a bad name. But it's good to have some techniques up your sleeve, for sure. Yeah, it's very cold outside. Not going to complain about the weather. It's a very English thing to do, but it's just been shocking. Shocking for me. Okay, this is shaping up quite nicely. Now imagine, right? Imagine, if you will, trying to draw this out without using like custom shapes, for example. You'd be here forever. And like, if this was client work, and I was trying to do, a few thumbnails. I needed to give them 3 thumbnails for this kind of misty forest setting. Like, I could put 3 of these together in a day, using this kind of technique. And not only that, if they did like one, it's not a complete mess, one layer kind of thing. It's already layered up, so I could immediately take, this, let's say it was in black and white, like I could immediately take the black and white version with all of its layers and shapes straight into color straight away, and the composition wouldn't change or anything, and that is primo, because you don't want the client to approve something and you painted it all on one layer and you're like, boom, there it is, and they're like, sweet, yeah, we want to go forward with this one. You're like, excellent. And then you spend a week painting on it, breaking bits out into layers and painting this, that, and the other, and you send it back, and loads of parts of the composition have changed because you painted it in that way. And then they're like, actually, we preferred like all of these shapes from the thing we approved. That's why we approved it. And you're like, oh yeah, but I'm a shithead. I did it on one layer, and so I can't retrieve it. And they're like, great, thanks. Thanks for being that person. And then that becomes a very miserable process. And this is basically the way that I would do a character illustration. Is, try and block it out in layers with flat shapes behind stuff, even if it's very basic. And that's how we did it with the main image that we were working on just before the new year. As I was showing you, that's how we were doing that. Because yeah, it's very, very good and easy and adaptable process to take forward. So think about it. Think about it. I've been that person many times, so that's why I say it. I've been that person that is like, sweet, they really like the thumbnail. I've made this thumbnail in such a stupid way that I'm gonna have the hardest time painting this. So I've learnt from my mistakes. Actually, the bottom on the other side was better. Sorry, mumbling to myself. So right now, still building up the composition. It's there. I need to add in like the hills and stuff, and it will seem kind of quite basic in the beginning, but then we can build up texture and layers and other stuff, mist and so on, and it will hopefully come together quite nicely. I actually haven't done one that's like as complicated as this for a while, so we'll see. Watch me fail. But hey, I'm having fun. I'm glad I did cycle here and do it today. I was laying in bed this morning being like, why should I get out of bed and go and stream? But I was like, no, don't be lazy. But I played a lot of Path of Exile in the last few days though. It's been really great. It's been excellent, in fact. Yeah, what's nice as well, as opposed to like drawing this out flat, is the ability to just go back and, you know, change things. Like this whole shape, for example, these three, you know, I can come back in and warp and change these at any point to manage the composition. So like once I have all the shapes in and the rough composition down, I still have a lot of options when it comes to like editing, which is really helpful, especially when trying to find like a composition. Trying to retain those like larger, more basic shapes again. Oh great, I've been falling into the clutches of Monster Hunter again recently. Awesome series, man, can't get enough. Yeah, Monster Hunter is sick, dude. Which one are you playing right now? I've got to say, I much prefer like the portable Monster Hunters to Monster Hunter World and so on. I used to play... The last one that I really enjoyed was Monster Hunter Generations, because it just had like so much of the old monster roster, and yeah, just really interesting monsters from throughout the series. And I do like the more sort of like arcadey feel to the older Monster Hunters. I think Monster Hunter World, obviously they went for something a bit more like realistic and with a bit of story and so on, but yeah, I did prefer the older titles. I played World and I played Rise. I did enjoy Rise as well, but yeah, Monster Hunter, such a cool series. Monster Hunter is peak. I haven't played since the first couple of updates of World. Got to get back to it. Wilds, yeah, nice. Yeah, I haven't played Wilds yet. I've been deep in the path. I'm currently playing Wilds. Made a friend buy World, so going to go through the story again with him. My sister used to have a PSP with Monster Hunter installed on it. Hadn't even learned how to read at that point, so I couldn't make any progress on them. Yeah, those old ones. I had Monster Hunter. Maybe. I can't remember what it was called now. It was quite old on the PSP. It could have even been the first one. And yeah, that game was not made with user experience in mind. Those old ones are really complicated, and the game didn't tell you much going into it. Yeah, it was quite the task, I gotta say. But it was very fun. Right, I'm going to use the camel shape here. Let's use the camel. I want to try and help define some surfaces up here for the rocks that we can use. Don't worry about what color these things are right now. That's all going to change. It's all going to change. Yeah, the oldest titles are awful, but like the first couple, they're just really difficult, and the game doesn't explain much. And like the quality of life changes that they made for Worlds and all the stuff going forward, like, are, in my opinion, they make the game a lot better, and the old ones just don't have that. So you'll be like, what? How do you do XYZ? The game will never tell you. You'll be shocked by like how little information there is, and like how bollocks the UI is and stuff like that. But like Generations Ultimate is great, I think, because it has like a lot of some of the modern conveniences of Modern Hunter pre-Worlds, but it still has the same feel for the most part of like all of the older handhelds. And it just has the biggest monster roster of all the games. Like, yeah, really decent monster roster. Massive, in fact. Which is obviously great. That's why you play Monster Hunter after all. Now these ones here are just going to be like really lost in the mist, so they don't need to be that detailed. Alright, can play around with that in a sec. probably gonna cool dense. Why does yours look better than the photo? I mean, I'm using the photo as a reference, right, to have something visually to latch onto, but I'm trying to sort of stylize the scene and like make a composition out of it, you know, that is my own, if you like. So I'm kind of borrowing the visual elements of it, but just not copying it. So in that way, yeah, it doesn't really look like the photo. It's its own thing. But I'm really sort of trying to push the composition and sort of stylize it as much as possible. So it has a certain different look about it than the photo does. But yeah. Okay, so, but I appreciate you think it looks better. What are the monsters that you think have a great design? I'm quite fond of the newer designs like Jindahad. Yeah, I think that's pretty cool. Yeah, I have to think about some of the monsters. It's kind of hard to like think of and talk and paint at the same time, but yeah, I do really favorite monsters to me usually come from like really good ones to fight. So the most fun experiences I've had with Devil Joe on the old handheld versions, aka Murder Pickle, because it is just ridiculous, and like it would be very fun fighting that as a 4 and just getting stomped and chased around. Like it is ridiculous, ridiculous monster, and yeah, but definitely the best memories. Hammock gameplay in World was better in my opinion, but not really enjoying Wales nonetheless. Yeah, I used to play a lot of Hammer, a lot of dual swords. Got really into the bow for a while. But yeah, I'd always play Hammer because everyone else was playing like something else, and we needed a knockout guy. Okay, so we have our composition here. And yeah, I might like fiddle around with the composition some more as we go. But what I'm going to try and put in here now is an understanding of like some of the main values, and try and tie some of this together with a bit of texture and so on, where we can continue to use like the custom shapes to do that. Give ourselves like an interesting texture, in this hill at the front, for example, is a good place to start, because this has a kind of a value range to it that I think is quite important to the overall. And then obviously we'll like have some stylized mist and so on going into this. So we'll try to do this. So this hill in the foreground, this is if I squint my eyes at this, there are shapes. Well done. There are shapes here, but there's lots of smaller shapes, larger shapes, and texture and so on. But what I notice here, let's do this on where is it? Tutorials layer. So here, right, we've got these darker shapes. They're like larger, yeah? These darker, larger shapes. And then as we're sort of going over the hill and backwards, see how these shapes then get like a bit smaller and a bit lighter? And then eventually, like at the top here, These shapes are like really, really small. So there's an idea of like size diminishing in these shapes as they go over the top. And this really helps to sell the fact that there is some distance between like here and here in the image. That obviously when you have a flat shape like this doesn't have any of that. So I'm going to use the custom shape tool to draw out some shapes here to give me a kind of random texture that goes from small to large, and then I'm going to warp that into that shape, and I'm going to use that as kind of a basis to paint into for that area, and that's going to hopefully give us a bit of depth, and so on. And then, you know, well, we'll just go around. Yeah, I have a bit more of a think about the monsters as I'm painting, because like I said, I can't really think of some. There's one called Valstrax that's really good. He's like a sort of rocket dragon thing. It's kind of mental. It's very arcadey, but the older games are very arcadey, and I do prefer that than Wilds. There's no story basically, and you just like, you go out, you select the hunt, you go out, you hunt, you come back, you craft, then you're like, oh, what do I want now? I want to go hunt something else, and so on and so forth. I prefer that to the story, because I think the story's shite in Monster Hunter, because it never used to be there, and it's like no one really cares. It's not good, so you know. Let's see, what have they got here? I'm just looking at some of these other... Oh, this would be quite good. So these are some of the default ones in Photoshop, these custom shapes. I'm just sort of seeing what kind of shapes they've got and how I might use them. This is kind of interesting, but it's yeah, the fronds kind of add a bit too much. I'm looking for something a little bit simpler. While I enjoy a bit of the story, it's just a vehicle to get to the next call. Yeah, exactly. In the handheld ones, there's no story. They, like, aside from if you want to read it, it really is just like, you're here to monster hunt. I'll try this. I'll try this one. This one could be a little bit too crunchy, but we'll see. Yeah, actually, that's going to be... I don't know. Let's try it. So what I'm doing here is I'm dragging out the custom shape tool. I'm trying to basically layer this up in a way that gives me negative spaces that are quite random, in a way that like a texture brush would. But what I also want to do is make sure that some of these spaces are much bigger at the front here. So I have like this depth going back. You can kind of see what's going on here already with this. Let's make this a lot bigger and clip it into that hillside, and then warp it to the kind of shape. Let's see if we kind of get something interesting. So, for example, I'm not sure if I'll use this exactly, but let's see. I can still paint into this, obviously, to bring shapes back in. Let's do it with a better brush here, and sort of take shapes away, like this hard edge, like that. Probably make that into a bit more of a curve. and see if this has what I'm looking for. Like, you can see this is the kind of thing that I'm after, right? Big spaces, and then the perception of a texture going all the way back, but that I have some amount of control over. And I can erase back into this as well if I want to bring in, some other shapes. But it's just going to give me a bit of a head start on here. And then because it's like clipped in to that layer, what I can do is paint on both sides of the shape. I'll show you what I mean. So, sorry, I notice things as I'm about to talk all the time. Yeah, so I have this shape, right? And let's say the hill underneath, these go like really black, so I can kind of paint those darks back into this shape. But then on this top layer, like, I can still try and introduce a bit of form by selecting it, locking it, and then, for example, taking a big texture brush and painting on the inside of that. And paint in some of these other shapes, and not disturb that edge that I've already put up. So it's like, it's layering information, but in a way that is completely editable, which is, and customizable in a way that, like, just painting it with a texture brush isn't quite as easy to do. Like, this painting that I'm doing on the inside of this, can be changed in a variety of ways to make it interesting. Like, I can just put a nice gradient, let's say, on this side, take some of that blue over here and have this darker sort of gradient. Take this and go back to my texture brush. Introduce a little bit of that, maybe pick up some of these edges. I know, I just find it quite an interesting way to do something like this, and it's kind of completely custom as well. Like, it's not a texture brush, so it's not going to be repeated everywhere. And you can have fun, like, finding different textures to do this with. Like, for example, you could actually just use one of those shapes. Like, I'm not joking. You could use something like this deer to create the basis for these shapes, or like, these wolves, or anything, basically. Yo, Oracle, what's going on? Welcome to the stream. And yeah, now that I'm painting on the inside of it as well, like, I can create the perception of kind of softer forms in this kind of moss and so on, but keep the nice design that the hard shapes give you in the beginning, and just sort of paint into it. Let me zoom in here. Of course, this is just two layers right now, right? It's that flat layer, this shape here, selected. It's that shape with this shape on the inside of it, and then I'm painting on either the bottom shape or the top shape, and I'm painting with inside that top shape with a bit of texture brush, but like, it retains all of these other details because it's just a flat shape. And what's cool is, let's say I paint on it for a bit and I'm like, okay, maybe I'm not so happy with the shapes in there. I can warp this whole shape again. And like maybe I find an area of it that I like a bit better, that sort of fits with the composition more, you know? I can mess around with it still. And, you know, for the impression, as an impression of like, what this is meant to represent, it works really well already for what? Not much effort at all. So, you know, this is essentially how I'm going to build up shit, I lost my train of thought. Fuck. Yeah, so anyway, on top of this as well, once we're later on in the painting, you know, something like this hard edge I might want to get rid of a little bit, so I can paint on top now and I introduce, you know, a little bit of grass or whatever. I can make my own other layers where I introduce some rocks and stuff on top of this, and so on, you know, all these little interesting things. But they can just be finishing touches where I could just spend a couple of hours once all these shapes are put in and just go around and like detail things and like add little extra parts, soften edges, lose edges. You know, I could even at the end say like flatten this down, could merge this, and say use something like a, where is it? Use a smudge brush and just like smudge out some of these edges in a sort of painterly way, so I don't have like so much of a hard edge, you know. And this would give it a little bit of a kind of a mossy texture, you know. And I do that right at the end, and up until then it's all customizable. Like at this point, if the client saw, you know, what I was doing here and they're like, oh, it's a bit too detailed, a bit too crunchy, I just go back to this shape, right, and, you know, lasso out some stuff, erase it, and simplify my shapes again, you know. Or I could pick another custom shape and make a whole nother hillside out of it, and just go like that. So yeah, anyway, let's do the next hill back a little bit, and I will try to build up all of these shapes, and then yeah, we'll hopefully get somewhere pretty decent by the end. So let's take one of these more random shapes. So I used the tree before, which is kind of natural, kind of makes sense, right? But let's use something weird. We'll use, should we see what the camel gives us? So this is the camel shape. Right, I'll do it in black, so there's you can see it over everything. Let's quickly save as well. Really want to learn how you simplify these complex references. It's so good. Thinking of getting an iPad soon so I can do these types of studies a little more spontaneous. Yeah, defo. The VOD for this will be saved on YouTube as well, so you can watch it back anytime. You can see how we created the shapes to do this. And yeah, happy to go over stuff. So yeah, okay. Yeah, save your files, everyone. So this is the camel, right? How are we going to make sort of, you know, a sort of receding hillside thing out of the camel? I think what's important here is to give yourself that scale as you're building the shapes. You could warp it afterwards. I could show you both methods actually. I'll do it quickly. So if I have the camel, I like overlap it some, you know, go and do stuff like this. Something like this, right? I could take this shape, okay? I can scale it, and I can warp it, okay? But when I warp this, what I want to try and do is shrink the top edge down and widen the bottom edge out. And this kind of stretching like this, you can see the topology of this is like similar to how I want the hillside to be. So if I take this and I scale it down, okay, and then I'm going to clip it into my hillside. So now it's in here. You see how, because I have that warping and I have large shapes at the back, small shapes at the back, large shapes at the front, it gives me the impression of like perspective of a surface going away from me, in the same way that this does. Larger shapes, smaller shapes, they get tighter and tighter and tighter as they go back. So it gives me the form of this hill for free, right? And so I did that there, but I wasn't thinking about those shapes going front to back. And because of the warp tool, like, I get a pretty good impression of that. I could make this smaller and show you even more. I get a pretty good impression of that, right? And this would maybe work quite well. I'm looking at these shapes as like, you imagine like here, the water flowing over rocks. You can see how that would be a good basis for something like that over here. And that's just with warping it. So going from just camels, overlapping and warping. But the other way you can do it is to think about that size difference when you're actually putting the shapes down. So if I start with really long and thin shapes at the back, like this, and then gradually as I come a bit more forward, I make the shapes like more vertical and larger, and in this way, if I put this on top of everything just so you can see it, in this way I've created that same idea from the beginning, and this gives me a bit more variance in the shapes. So whereas those ones before, they had that sort of, you know, the camel's leg made that sort of waterfall looking shape, now this kind of looks a lot more like puddles in the ground. Or in this way, it looks a lot more like this could be the light area and these could be the shadow area of this part of the ground. And you could layer up a few layers of this so you had sort of 2 or 3 versions of it. You could even take this entire shape, you know, and duplicate it on itself and shrink it down if you wanted a bit more noise and so on, or you wanted to introduce, you know, diagonals or anything like that. You can get a bit more custom with it. But yeah, essentially these are kind of the 2 ways that you can use these shapes with each other to form these surfaces. So again, I'll shrink this down some amount, and then I'll clip it into the hill. And then I'm going to warp it so that, you know, these lines follow the shape of the hill a little bit. And this also helps with that read of the perspective. You know, something like this. And yeah, while it's black like this, it looks kind of crazy. But if I start painting on either side of it, sorry, I'm just putting in a couple of like shapes here. So if I lock that and I'm going for like a little bit more of this, put that in there, and the hillside itself, let's go for that kind of slightly, pardon me, darker value. Bit of a texture brush, and so on. And again, like similar to how we did this one, we're just going to paint inside of it on both sides of the shape. So the shape on top and the shape below. You can introduce a little bit of a gradient into these shapes, which again really helps with sort of placing them in space and giving them form, which is, you know, what we're aiming for, and so on. Even a bit of lighting, although I don't want it to be like as light as this one, but we will mess with the colors a lot more later. But yeah, there you go. Boom. Hillside. Other thing that's important, as you go further back, right? I don't want to use this shape in this hill back here because it's too much detail. So this shape, as you saw, was a lot simpler than this one. And as they go back, they can just get simpler and simpler, to the fact that back here, I'll probably just hand paint these ones because they won't need to be very detailed at all. You don't want this same level of fidelity here all the way back here. It will look really sort of flat and strange. So you want to drop that detail off as you go further back. Similarly, it will be with the trees, right? I'm going to save this. The trees is a different beast, though, and we'll get to the trees when we get to the trees. I promise. I will travel a lot per month, so being able to take work with me will be a good thing. Yeah, agreed. That's why I work on a laptop, so I can travel and work. You know what I'd also love to be good at? Drawing really good capes and cloaks. Yeah, I'll definitely like get a Spawn comic and just do some studies of Spawn's cloak, and you'll be good at it in no time. Yeah, the single camel tech. Yeah, for real. So let's see. I've got this rock here. He looks kind of out of place now because he's flat on here. So let's paint into this a little bit. Place this guy in the world. Give him a little bit of a stylization to his shapes. Bit of form, bit of edge. Yep. So here, you see, kind of instinctively, I give this guy small, medium, and large strokes through him. Large stroke, medium stroke, small stroke. And that's how I'm defining the shadow side and the light side. And I'm making those shapes small, medium, and large because there is variance between them. It's variance with how they interact with each other, and it creates, you know, different size negative spaces, which are quite nice for the eye to look at. So it's simple and it's stylized, and it's not overly detailed and realistic, but it's going to kind of sit it quite nicely in space here. And then underneath, I'll make another quick layer for a sort of a shadow to place him into the hillside a bit, and we'll paint into this a little bit more later, although it's not going to need an awful lot. Something unlocked in my comprehension now. Thank you. Oh, you're most welcome. Sorry. I know it's maybe a little bit annoying if I'm like constantly talking and makes the painting a bit slower, but I feel like people tune in because they want things explained, and I'm happy to explain them. And it also sort of helps me solidify what's going on in my mind as I'm painting, to talk about it as I do it. So right, I'm gonna hit the top of this with one texture brush, just one stroke, just get that slight bit of texture in there so it feels a bit mossy overall. But yeah, okay, it's looking alright. Might make him a little bit smaller. Yeah, and we'll come back to this in a bit. Boom. All right. So I think I'm looking at this. I'm just thinking, like, in my head, what needs to happen. I think obviously the mist is something that's going to come in much later, because the mist is going to be something that like ties all of the layers together and sort of helps these hard transitions, like this transitioning to this, to this, to this, etc. Like here, there's nice soft transitions, and that kind of happens within the shapes also. So this mist that we're going to do later is really going to pull stuff together. So before that, I kind of want to sort out anything that's kind of less in the mist. So that's mainly like foreground trees up to about the midground, and this river portion here that has quite a lot of these like wet rocks in it, and so on. And right now, like the colors aren't even there and everything. So I'm going to try to sort the river out a little bit. Then I'll go into how we talk about how we do the trees and why that's maybe a little bit different than the ground. And then it should be kind of time to pull it all together with the mist. So I've got about 2 hours left to try and pull this together, and we'll see where we get to. So yeah, let's see if we can do it. Okay, so yeah, the river's a little bit of a difficult one here because in the photo, you know, these are kind of like wet rocks, and then the river sort of is trailing between them, which I like. I'm going to try and keep that. And then here, you know, the water is a little bit kind of noisy, right? So that you don't get this kind of clean reflection of the sky here. You start to get it a bit here, but nothing here. So in my image, I'm going to sort of make it appear like the water is a lot more calm than it is. Like I want to keep this little slight elevation change around here. I'm going to keep this kind of middle portion almost like flat, kind of slightly glassy in a way. And then this rock portion I want to keep like this. So that's what we're doing. Get the program. Yeah, I just did something with my UI there that I didn't want to do, but it is done. So whatever happened, happened. Did I just resize it slightly? Not to worry. Not to worry. So we got... These are also camel shapes. So yeah, I did use the camels quite a bit already. Thought I'd forgotten to use them. And that's why I used them for the hillside here, but... we already had them. Oh, sorry. We already had them. Okay, and this is the river itself. And the rocks that are back there. So here I'm just doing a lot more freehand painting. The shapes on the water, they don't need to be as defined because I want them to feel different from the land in that sense. And even here on the photo, it's quite difficult to tell because of like the low resolution. But like the water here is kind of quite noisy, and so is the land. And you could be mistaken that this is just not even water. And like in this picture, I want to try pick up that difference so that we have that river in there a little bit. So if I paint them a little bit kind of smoother overall by just using a harder brush. Sorry, a little bit kind of with a softness between them, basically, is what I'm trying to say. And we'll get a bit more of that sort of sky reflection in there. Later on, when the image is like kind of more finished, what I will do is grab basically a flat version of the image, just like a JPEG of it, and reflect a little bit of that, you know, basically flip it and reflect it into the water a little bit and just edit it. And that way it will look like it's reflecting what's above as well. But we'll do that at the end because you need pardon me, you need the landscape finished to be able to like borrow it and reflect it in. I'm using these little edges here that this custom shape edge gave me as like an indication of the elevation changes, so that I can get this little kind of waterfall-y thing going. Quite like the blue that's in there. Let's just push it slightly more blue. Yeah, there we go. Oof. A little bit more interest in the palette there. And then we can go back to that custom shape that's sort of dictating what's there. And go in this and take a texture brush. Being careful not to put like too much texture in it, right? Like I was saying before. It's quite far back, so the amount of texture we need is fairly minimal. It just needs to be enough to indicate that there is something going on there, but I don't want to be super detailed about this in any way. It's too far back for that, and it just doesn't need it. It's just the suggestion, right? And I will hit a few of these surfaces with just like a slightly different blue, so that it kind of appears like the rock faces are at different angles to the light, so they're catching the light slightly more. You know, like here, you've got this area that's lighter, and then here it's darker, here it's darker. You know, here it's lighter, there it's darker. You got to imagine that these rock faces are like pointing in different directions, so they're picking up the light differently, and they're kind of wet as well, which also plays into it. So just kind of picking that up, and I'm making an amalgamation of that. Like in essence, what's going on? We've got shadow and we've got light, and those two shapes are interacting, and those two shapes are textured. The water is slightly differently textured than the rocks in this case. And so it gives a visual impression of like a noise. So we're trying to like break down simply what is the, in essence, that noise that's going on back there, and just trying to approximate it. We're not, you see, I'm not even really looking at that too much. I'm just like, okay, it's roughly this kind of thing. And the key is not to overdo it, right? And know when to stop with that. So I'm indicating something. I'm fairly happy with that indication right now. And I know that a lot of that top part of it is going to be in the mist as well. So the mist is really going to tie everything together. So the mist is also going to help sort our values out a little bit as well. So that's also going to help. You got to think of the mist like the rug in The Big Lebowski. It really ties the room together. All right. So that's saved. Let me just grab my other bottle of water because that one's finished. Winning the hydration game today. Okay, we're back. Water achieved. So, let's talk about trees a little bit. And I have an example of something I want to show you. That I think is a helpful visual reference here. And so let me put this on top, and I will also just put this person's art station here so that you can go look at that if you want to look at it. But anyway, this image, you can see here the trees are a shape, right? They've been painted with a brush very nicely, so you've got all this nice variance, right? Very cool. But the shape is split into two, like we're doing with all of the rocks and everything in the image. We've got essentially the shadow, which has all these lovely false colors in it, which is something we can do on our image as well. And then it has where the light hits the leaves, and that's this kind of green edge on top. And that separates out the tree into light and shadow and gives us two spaces to paint within. Exactly what we're doing, but I think this illustrates it quite nicely. And here is something similar, where you have essentially the same shape, but within that as well you have like these hue variations and value variations that make it seem a lot more naturalistic. It's much more painterly, right? So this is what we're aiming to achieve with the trees here, is to define a light shape, define a shadow shape, and then paint on both sides of that to give us an idea of foliage. And then as we get further back in the image, as this becomes a lot more kind of abstracted and less defined in its shapes than something like this, the same thing is going to happen as we get further and further back into these areas. So I just wanted to show you that as an example, because I saw this a few weeks ago and was like, oh, that's how I would go about it. But this is a very sort of nice painterly version of that. It's got these really nice like purples in there and stuff as well. So anyway, we're going to attempt to try and find that same thing but with the trees here, and maybe even use some of the custom shapes of the trees themselves to help define those shapes within the trees. So like a foreground tree here, let's do this one. And I'm going to copy and paste that exact same shape right now, and I'm going to clip it to it, and I'm also going to change the value of that. Yeah, exactly. I'm also a big fan of hue variation like that as well. Oh, whoops! Sorry, ruined that shape just there. Yeah, sorry, I needed to lock it. Okay. So yeah, I copied and pasted the custom shape inside because it has an idea of texture and edges in there that relate to the contour of the tree itself, because it is the same tree, and this way it can help define that light and shade in a more naturalistic way, and then I can use this as the basis for me to like mess around with that shape in here. Let's make this a lot darker, a bit more saturated. Yeah. So all I'm now doing is like erasing into this shape a little bit to define some light planes and some shadow planes within this shape, and it's going to give me basically the light hitting the top of the tree. And you can, with these ones in the foreground, you know, they're going to be like a little bit more detailed, and you can get a little bit of like smaller form, you know, going on. And you don't have to do this with a solid brush, but I do prefer doing that for cleaner shapes, to do something like this. And this, like in the example I just showed you, is going to give me two shapes, just like we did with the hillside. One to paint into on one side, one to paint into on the other. And yeah, we can introduce a little bit of hue variation, a little bit of texture in there, and essentially that's how we're going to paint our tree. So I'm going to lock it again, and I'm going to take a little bit of the kind of bluer area, and I'm going to like essentially airbrush in a little bit of a gradient across the shape, which is going to mimic the fall off from top to bottom in the color palette already. Also going to introduce a little bit of some of those false colors and hues in here, just because it is kind of interesting and enriches the palette somewhat. Get a bit of a textury brush in here. And then in the shadow side of it, again, lock that, take that, get a little bit of that variance in there. And honestly, you can spend as much time as you want going back and forth. False color, what is false color? Basically, it's taking the color that is there, you know, so this color here, that's what is there. But let's say I wanted to paint this like that guy did and make it a bit more lively. If I shift the hue of it slightly to something of the same, oh, hang on, it's all going wrong. Something of the same or similar value, right? Like this. This is what we call false color. It's the same. It's the correct value, but the color for what it is false. So like trees aren't purple, but we can use a little bit of purple in place of the green or any other color. As long as the value is very similar, it will work and we can mix it in. And that's just what we call false color. So if I'm talking about false coloring, what I'm talking about is essentially using colors in the image that aren't the ones that you see directly in nature. They are a falsification of that, but the value is very similar, and that's why they sort of sit there sort of quite quietly. They catch your eye a little bit, but yeah, they're just accents. That's what I mean by that. It can be a really good way to sort of liven something up a little bit. Something like this, which is essentially quite monochromatic. You know, it's greens and blues and greys, and you can use a little bit of false color just to liven up the palette a tiny bit, and you know, give the eye on closer inspection a little something to get excited about. And then while these shapes, like this and the one behind it, kind of blend into each other quite a bit right now, they won't once the mist comes in, because you know, I can separate them out a bit more, so they kind of look like a little bit strange in the beginning, but trust, they won't be. I want to saturate this a little bit more in the foreground. Maybe darken that light down a little bit. Then I'm going to take that same shape, like a mad lad, put it on the inside of this one. As a shortcut, paint into it slightly differently to get a different impression of the light and shadow, but basically saving myself a little bit of time. And overall, I want this one to be a little bit darker because it's slightly closer to the camera. And I want it to have this impression of like being in the shade a bit more. And later on I can go in and like smudge out some of the edges of this shape a little bit, or like paint some of these out a little bit more, soften them up, even slightly blur that entire thing a little bit. But right now it's about the impression. Okay, so now as we move into trees that are getting progressively like more and more into the image, the degree to which this light and shadow is very contrasty, I want to diminish quite a bit. And the detail on these trees as well really wants to be a lot lower overall as we get further and further back, until like you see some of these, they're basically just a silhouette with like a gradient in it. Okay, even this one to a degree, right, is like it's darker here, it's lighter here, it's just a gradient within the tree. There is like a slight noise. So for these ones, well, instead of doing like that same technique wholesale, I'm going to be a little more painterly with it and just sort of hand paint that stuff in a little bit more. And basically drop the detail off a little bit. And just rely a bit more on larger gradients to carry the impression. And that way it's going to have that same kind of mist and mood about it that the reference does. And this is when you realize with stuff like this, that was always a concern of mine before I really got into trying to learn how to do landscapes, is that, man, there's just so much to paint. And it's not, if I think about characters, away from my focal point, like I drop the detail off immensely. So why wouldn't I do that with the landscapes and just try and like detail out from the focal point or things closer and try and get that same impression going, you know? So in reality, there's actually a lot less to paint than you would initially perceive. But you do have to sort of think in layers and think in impression, like what's where. Sorry, I'm just editing that shape. That little bit was annoying me. Save the image. Sip some water. Yeah, so this tree behind, he's basically just going to be like a little bit of texture brush, kind of a gradient going on within the shape. Like, really not an awful lot going on with that guy. Another damn H2O junkie, yeah. I say I just don't drink enough water. I'm really bad for it. I'll just drink tea and decaf coffee all day. And I'll get to the end of the day and I won't have had any just pure H2O. Mad lad. Alright, next tree up. Chuck in some Robinsons. Yeah. I like the taste of water. It's got nothing to do with not liking the taste of it. It's just like prefer to drink a tea or a hot drink. You know, it's just cozy, bro. I'm just a cozy bro, dude. Honestly, you should see me like battling to get out of bed this morning. I was like, ah! I'm not someone that likes to sleep in. I just the coldness of it was really messing with my brain this morning. I was chatting to Daisy on my phone, and I was like, I really wanted her to just be like, well, if you don't, you know, if it's really cold, and you don't fancy it, just don't go in. I really needed that like excuse, you know. If she'd have given me the go ahead, I wouldn't be streaming right now. But she didn't, so I was like, no, okay, I'm going again. Hey, yo. Misuki, thank you for the follow. Welcome to the stream. Thanks for the follow. Much appreciated. Okay, sorry, I'm getting lost in the sauce here. Thinking about how sick it's gonna be when I'm home later, all warm, playing Path of Exile. Okie dokie. So, let's get real. Which tree are we up to? So I'm just trying to like really quickly bash in some of these textures on the trees so that I can get to sort of the mist and then even sort of the more finishing touches portion of this, because I'm just conscious of the time. Like I could always stream longer, that's true as well, but I have about an hour and a half that I definitely want to do, and yeah, if we're close to the end by then I'll stream for longer. But I'm just trying to get some of these things in here so we can get to sort of the layering part. Kingdom Come Deliverance 2. Yeah, I heard that's good. Tiger V00. Tiger Vu. Thanks for the follow. Silent Hill 2. Yes. Yeah, Silent Hill 2 is good. Cozy. Misty cozy. Misty cozy. Mr. Cozy, come on. So I know right now this looks like, what the hell? Where's any separation? But that's coming. That's coming. So, in case you were worried. That's right. But I'm in like Limbo Hell section now in Silent Hill 2. I'm missing the town. Yeah, the best bit of Silent Hills for me is walking around like the misty town, and it's like just very, very eerie and moody and dark and so on. Like Resident Evil, the village portion of it, where you're outside, like walking around in the snow and kind of everything's all dilapidated and stuff. That's really cool. I love that kind of the mood of it. It's really nice. I was looking at the game the other day because I was thinking of getting it to play, but I just ended up watching like a let's play of it, and yeah, that's kind of what has inspired partly wanting to do a really sort of misty image today. Is been wanting to do something very moody, very misty. Yeah, Village is gorgeous. If you get 10 more followers, Alex will stream for an extra hour. Yeah, I already like feel my tongue getting like fat from talking. Got that swole tongue. I didn't play the new one, but I watched gameplay. It's very cool. Resident Evil 8 inspired a lot of my own IP. Silent Hill 2 made me abandon my completionist mentality. I just want to get the hell out now. Yeah. No, I do really like the mood that they got going in Village, and obviously Silent Hill 2, but PT, obviously, that was really sick. I would just play one of those like liminal space simulators, not like Space Simulator, but liminal space simulator on Steam. I saw one where you can just walk around this like kind of big swimming pool complex that has all these like really crazy swimming pools, and like nothing happens. You just walk around the complex, and it's like kind of looks like a VHS tape, and it's all very quiet liminal spaces with all these giant pools. And I was like, oh, I could do that. Okay, so this hill, really far back. It's really far back. Right? Follow for more top tips like that. But because of that, contrast a lot lower. Detail a lot lower. There shouldn't be any like mad loads of detail here that's going to pull the eye. Notice how all the detail is like dropping off as we get further and further back in the image. This has got to be the case. Otherwise you're going to create really absurd levels of detail, and the image is going to feel really flat because of it, mismatched. And this is obviously, I learned this photo bashing, is that it often have a lot of trouble with photos that are all at different resolutions throughout the image, and the biggest part of like pulling a good photo bash together is actually managing detail fidelity front to back, and in that way, like, eventually using much lower res photos was actually a much better way of managing that, because you could paint on top of lower res photos a lot easier than like a 4K photo of something. And that meant that if your image had lots of painting over photos, and you mixed in a little bit of 3D, for example, all that kind of stuff was actually a lot easier to put together. So I try and think of that when I come to painting, that I'm trying to drop that detail off, and if I want to add new things, then the detail level needs to fall as it goes further and further away from camera, and this makes it a lot easier to paint. Yo, Ace, thanks for tuning in, much appreciated, and have a lovely rest of your day. And again, thanks for the sub, my guy. You're a very exclusive club. You and Dead Toothbrush, big up on the subs game. Hey, Master Cleopa, thank you for the follow. Welcome to the stream. Okay. So we're getting to the real juicy part now. I'm actually getting pretty excited now about where we're going to go with this. A couple of things need to happen. I'm going to quickly make myself a hot drink and use the bathroom, and then I'll come back, and when I come back, I'll finish off the last of the sort of first pass of the texturing of everything, and then we'll get into kind of tying it together with some kind of stylized mist layers, and then we're kind of working on like painting over the top, finishing touches, reflections, anything like that, all the kind of cool stuff that you can do near the end of something like this. So yeah, give me a sec, I'll just put you guys on Be Right Back, and I'll be back. Yeah, I'm back. Sorry for that. Nature calls, but a new shitty decaf instant coffee achieved. So we're back. Oh, thanks for the YouTube shout out. Yes, all of the VODs, as Dan has so kindly put there, for the streams are saved on YouTube, so you can go back and rewatch any of this, because unfortunately Twitch deletes them after a while. So yeah, they're there. Please go watch. I put them there so that anything we do you can reference again later, because I know, like, for example, if you missed the beginning on how we made the custom shapes for the trees, and just that process in general, and all the other little tutorials that go on, you can catch them there. Nice. Hello. So rare to find a stream with someone that paints. Most of the streams are with manga drawings. Yeah. Yeah, there's a lot of that. I noticed. You know, when I was streaming a lot more, like, several years ago now, there was not much of that at all. Like, it was there, but it wasn't anywhere near as prevalent as it is now. But yeah, it just got, like, crazy when I came back and was setting this stream up. I was just like, what the fuck is going on? Each to their own, I guess. Sorry, I'm just grabbing these last layers and sorting out what's behind everything. Putting a bit of subtle hue variation back there. Okay, so now comes, like, kind of an interesting part where I want to sort of tie the front and back together a little bit. With the mist, and kind of lose some of the hardness. Like, you see here, this edge is, like, completely lost almost and it gives it the real mood that this image has, whereas this is, like, there is some amount of that gradient happening, but it doesn't have the same mood. And this is where we're going to start doing that. And this will also come into play as, like, this back layer, I can kind of use the smudge brush and blur it a little bit and stuff like that to give us a bit more of a softer appearance. And same with some of these things, we just paint into this a bit more to do that. So this is why it's good to have everything in layers, because I can sort of pick between layers, like, where I want to drop that mist to knock things back. And we'll just do several layers of mist, and I will color the mist layers also in, let's do them grey for the mist. And I don't want to do them just completely, like, soft gradient style. Like, I really want to have a bit more of a sort of a shape to this mist, going along with our sort of stylization, essentially. So there is going to be a bit of a kind of a design to it, a bit of a shape to it, but only subtly. Like, it's not it's not going to be sort of like Super Mario clouds in there, but there is going to have sort of a noticeable edge to some degree in here. And what I will do is also do this on a lighten layer. A lighten's very good at like collapsing values together, because you're essentially a lighten layer. You're telling Photoshop anything underneath this that is this value or darker becomes this value, and it's really good for kind of pulling things together in that way. It's a good layer for that. Making a composition is so hard than doing a character drawing, and it is more pleasant to watch how the colors combine and give you a lot of insights. I don't know how to draw, just watching for relaxation. Ah, cool. Yeah, composition is kind of the final boss. Really, I feel like it's something that you learn and you accumulate kind of the knowledge of over the years of like studying artwork, and that at a certain point it really is like the final boss, if you like. It's difficult to learn because it encompasses actually most other things that you need to learn in artwork. Quace, thanks for the follow. You know, composition, it takes into account everything that you learn. You know, color, shape, design, like all of those things come together in some way to inform the composition, and inform where the eye is looking in the image. And therefore, I think it's quite difficult for people to grasp in the beginning, because they only have some of the skills necessary, and they haven't worked on others because they're still learning, and so on. And it becomes very like all-encompassing. It seems like a really daunting task, but the more you study, and you know, the more sort of art literate you become through those studies, the easier composition becomes, and it's then something that you can start to tackle, you know, head on. But it's very, very difficult in the beginning. It just, composition is all of the things together. That's why it's so hard. It's like, if you want to just learn color, you can learn color, right? You can learn how to identify color and you know, mix colors, and you know, learn what colors go together to make a sunny day image, and what colors go together to you know, bring this, something like this together, so on and so forth. You can learn that independently of like knowing how to draw anything, right? Similarly, you can learn anatomy and draw people and really have no knowledge on color whatsoever, right? And you can get amazingly good at drawing and have like little to no knowledge about that. But when you come to composition, like all of those things tie together, and yeah, you need to know it all. And I think that's why it's so difficult. It seems like, well, how do I know all of this stuff, you know? Nothing I love more than a little story illustration. Yeah, exactly. I'm going to kind of put some sort of like rising pockets of mist out here at different depths, because I think it's cool. It gives it a bit more of a sort of fantasy feeling as well. Helps separate out some things front to back a little bit more. I'm not going to go like overboard with it, but you know, it's going to be there. So what do we think of the mist so far? Do we like it? No mist. All the mist. And we'll just come like front to back doing that. You learned all this in Art Academy? No. I've everything I've learned from all different places over the years. I'll go into that in a second. Hey, Buddy Night, welcome to the chat, welcome to the stream. Yeah, I think everything I know is an accumulation of just the years that I've been studying, because I've learned just as much from working with artists in my career as I have done at art school. You know, I've learned from self-teaching my stuff, certain things in books. I've learned from just looking at other people's artworks. I've learned from going to events and seeing artists do lectures. And it's all been an from did I say books already? But from books, it's just been an accumulation of knowledge over, you know, when did I first start drawing? I think I first started drawing when I was a kid, so you know, it's been a long accumulation of stuff over time. And obviously I learnt quite a bit at art school, don't get me wrong, and that was more concentrated learning, let's say, but yeah, it really has been a, you know, I guess a lifetime's accumulation of knowledge from various sources. It's such a beautiful landscape. Thank you. Yeah, we if you've just joined in, I've been painting this for 3 hours, and you can watch the whole process on YouTube. The link is on the Twitch page, and yeah, you can watch it from the beginning if you missed anything, you want to catch up on it. What would you say is the most valuable lesson that helped you make better art? I asked for your personal experience, not just general. The most valuable lesson, I think, is to work general to specific. I think... Oh, it's in the pinned comment also. Awesome. Thanks, Dan. Yeah, to work general to specific. And what I mean by that is, and I mean, this probably goes further than just artwork, but to always start with the large impression and the big image first. So the biggest shapes, the biggest lines, the largest area of color, like anything like that. To do those things before going into any detail, and work from general to specific in every way that you can see that to happen. In the way that we did this, for example, we started very generally with the shapes, just line drawing, right? Very simple. Then we put all of the flat shapes in, then we started going in and putting a layer of detail in. And now we're bringing that together with the mist. And then we're going to do the finer details where you just sort of go around and do a lot of finishing touches and finessing of the image and really sort of painting into it. And that way we went from something very large and very general and very simple, and we went to specific. And that makes it a lot easier than just trying to start immediately with something that is on a smaller scale or very detailed or in one part of the image and so on. Essentially, we brought the image up as one complete visual at any point. Like, you could take a snapshot of this at any point that we were doing it, and it would look like a sort of clear idea of an illustration at that point. It wasn't ever like super abstract in a way that was like, what is going on? Because I was just working out from one detail, you know. It's and that is a piece of advice that I was told very early on, and it didn't resonate with me until I was much older. It really took a lot of trial and error and not doing things that way to really understand even what it meant and why it was so important. And now that principle is at the forefront of my mind when I come to paint, it does mean that I find, you know, I can tackle things a lot easier because I'm always thinking about this general to specific way of doing things. So I can look at, you know, this photo. You know, I grabbed this 10 minutes before stream because I was like, I want to paint a misty forest. I typed in misty forest, found the photo, got it here. Like, I haven't painted a forest like this ever, like dense like this. I've never done that. I've done bits of that, but I've never sat down and like done a full let's do a forest from scratch kind of thing. But I approach it like general to specific. I think of how I would do it with my characters, and I think about a process for doing that, and I try and break that down from the very beginning. And then it sort of breaks it down, and I'm able to do it, you know. So there you go. It's probably a long-winded way to answer that question, but hopefully that helped. General to specific for show, though. I actually love drawing landscapes too, and I avoid drawing people and characters. There's something timeless about nature that I love recreating, that is kind of beauty, my limited skill improving my craft. I wish you all the success and fulfillment in your work and personal life. Thank you very much, Bunny Knight. That's very kind of you. And you too, likewise. Thanks for tuning in as well. It's nice to have you here. Yo, Suzanne, what's up? Long time no see. Yeah, you too. How have you been? I've been good, thank you. I've been just working lots, and but otherwise, yeah, really good. Yeah, what's news with you? What's going on? Are you gonna stream? Are you still streaming? Dan, good advice, but what's your worst advice? My worst advice would be lens flares everywhere. Every image needs a lens flare. This one's going to get one when it's done. Always start with the lens flare. I think most people will tell you that it's a finishing touch, but I would argue I'd argue there's never a bad time to start with the lens flare on an image. Almost never is there a bad time to start with the lens flare. So yeah, I hope that helps. Hope that helps. It's some advice that I got very early on, you know. It's okay, you're passionate, and it shows. It's lovely trait to have. No need to feel shy about. Thanks. Then you go. Sorry, I'm just catching up on the chat. Life has been lifing, yeah, doesn't it? Just. Oh, I wish I need to prioritize it. I think if I want to stream again, mostly a lurker now. Yeah, fair enough. I only just started streaming again just before the holiday break. So we did a few streams just before, and today's the first day. Today's the first day back. And so yeah, I'm just doing a kind of stylization study of a photo. Ease myself back in, and then yeah, we do have like an image that we're working on, like a main splash art image, but yeah, I was just like, oh, this is first one back. I really want to paint this kind of misty forest kind of thing. So we're doing that instead right now. But yeah, I'll be back on the splash art hype after that. But yeah, I get you. Life do life. Life do be lifing. Disregard the form, making trees float like they have birds. Yeah. Lens flares. Exactly. Okay, got you. Add more lens flare, which is short for lens flare. LF. Okay, okay, good. Every time a client asks for a lens flare, an angel loses his wings. Nice, this is looking fun. I really like those tasty purples in the shadows. Well, we stole them from another picture. I brought a reference image up. It had really tasty purples in, and we were like, hey, yo. Where you going? Where do you think you're going? Okay. So. I have a question for everyone. Feel disregard it. Alrighty. Let me just figure out where my layers are for a sec. Where are you? I know I made them all grey, but so we got some mist in here now. Do need a little bit of like suppose I could do that at the very end. Just adjust the values. Yeah, I'll do a little bit of like grading near the end to pull some stuff forward and back a little bit. Need to find this layer. There we go. Okay. Industry workshops feels like forever ago, but also kind of still like yesterday. Yeah, I know. Time goes. Yeah, time absolutely flew. Since then, believe that. One of the practices you had to unlearn for the longest time. Basically, using black in place of like using a color for shadows, because a lot of the time, it's not to say you can't use black or mix with black or anything like that, but I'd always just reach for black instead of, you know, in this case, using a really dark purple or a very, very dark blue or something like that. I would just be like, oh, it's really dark, it's black. And it really took me the longest time to get over that. Hugo Talon Art, thank you for the follow. Welcome to the stream. Yeah, using black was definitely that. Unlearning using black, I should say, for literally everything. Yeah, difficult one. Really took a good while to undo that habit. Sorry, I'm just felt like this needed a little bit more layering over here. Okay. Yeah, like I said, there's nothing wrong with using black, and sometimes you do need to use black. It just needs to be super dark like that. But it can really flatten the image loads if you just always mix to black, and you'll completely like kill your colors if you're always mixing to black as well. And yeah, it can be what really... I'll show you an example, actually. That's probably the easiest way of explaining what I mean there. Give me one sec. Okay, so I'm looking up old artwork to show you what I mean. It's the only way. Okay, here's our old one. This is I'll put it in a new file quickly. Let me save this. Okay. So, what do I mean with the black? This is old artwork of mine. Oh, hang on, my camera's gone strange. What's happened here? All the settings on my camera disappeared. There we go. Phew! Okay, so this is an old stinker of an artwork, right? Of mine. And this, all of the shadows here go to black, right? That you can even see like how kind of stark the edges where the black comes into it. And like this image could really do with more subtlety in those shadows. So like these shadows down here, for example, because we have the fire near, which isn't casting any light on her leg for some reason. But anyway, you know, this could get away with being like a really dark sort of alizarin crimson kind of color in the shadow, and it would give this a lot more punch and vibrancy. It would really like help to make the skin look a lot more pale as well if we have like color around it, and then the skin is like very devoid of that. And it would, yeah, essentially just enrich the palette and give it a lot more atmosphere and so on. If every shadow wasn't just black, it just kind of, all of these areas like this just become one shape, because there's no nuance in the color palette whatsoever. So it makes it kind of hard to read as well, because we have all of these shapes that just melt up together, and there isn't any like hue variation to differentiate like the shadow on her outfit versus the shadow in her hair, you know, and so on. Or even tonally, just the different areas of the image. Like down here, the shadows could probably be affected a bit more by the fire, and the bloom of them would override that value a little bit. So this could be warmer down here and cooler up here. We could have like a slight bit more warmth in the shadow on the hair, for example, than we do on the clothing. So even though we've got shadow and shadow, that color difference would separate them so that it wouldn't be so hard to read, you know. Similarly in these, like it's just very broken up, and it's not the only problem is everything is black, but it does contribute to a lot of the problems with the readability of the image overall. So yeah, and that took me ages to unlearn, or at least not to do, and I still will do it accidentally, especially if I'm doing something difficult. The old habits kind of creep back in, you know. So I'm just looking at this. I'm looking at the time I've got. I got about 40 minutes left. And we have essentially, you know, a block out for the entire image. And what I would start to do from this point onwards is go around to all my individual kind of layers that these things are on, and start to, you know, paint into them a little bit, play with the shapes, maybe introduce a little bit more texture here and there, like look at really stark edges like this that are kind of flat and straight, and just sort of start to break them up a little bit, only in small amounts, right? To because I still want it to have that stylized edge to it, right? But things like this all the way back here, I might even like slightly blur this layer, or even say, just to show you, take a smudge brush and like start to smudge out some of these edges and shapes in a sort of more painterly way, so that it's just not as sharp back here. And you could even grab like this kind of brush, something like this, and paint out some of these shapes with a little bit of texture, right? So that, you know, the effect overall would be that this is like this is out of focus, but it's painted, in the way that it's done. So like I would go around the whole image basically sort of back to front and start looking at those things. Maybe I might sort of simplify some of these edges, for example. Let me just undo those things here. So on and so forth. And essentially just go around and nitpick and sort it all out. Because like right now, the image from here is kind of done, right? I've achieved the look that I was after, at least from this kind of view. But yeah, now if I was finishing this up, I would just go and nuance it. So I don't know that I have... Well, I'll just start doing it. I'll get to where I get to with it. Let's say that. I could potentially continue on with this same image tomorrow and do like a whole, session on it tomorrow where we finish it up. Really depends. What would you guys prefer to see? Would you prefer to see me work on the splash art image tomorrow? Or work on this again, because I could do either. We need to do an industry. Sorry, I'm catching up on the chat. You guys have been chatty. Curiosity question. Hang on. I need to scroll up. You guys have been chatting. Sorry, I've been blabbing and ignoring it all. Yeah. Black is rarely used in professional workflow, isn't it? I believe I've heard it's used only for shadows within shadows that you can really see. We do use it quite a lot. It's just like you shouldn't reach for it first, There's other options, basically. Curiosity question. Only a person that is born with this talent in his genes can draw? Does a non-gifted person have a chance to learn drawing if he has time to dedicate to it? Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. It is something that you can learn. I did. I couldn't draw as a child. I've just been drawing and had an interest in drawing since I was a kid, and been doing it. But I wasn't good at drawing as a child. I just enjoyed it, and therefore was encouraged, to do it a bit more. But it wasn't until I got out of high school that I thought about drawing as a career in any sort of way. For the longest time I wanted to go into the army, and then I was kind of a bit lost. I didn't really know what to do. Like once I realized I didn't want to go into the army, I didn't really think about having I didn't know what my career would look like in any capacity. I just didn't really think about it. And then I was like, well, I do enjoy drawing. Like, maybe I'll go to university and do some drawings. I did product design, which involved what's called technical drawing, which isn't really drawing so much as it is like essentially like blueprints. And so yeah, even then when I left university, like I couldn't draw a person to save my life. Like I couldn't observationally draw anything. Like I could sit there and draw out a sort of an engineer's drawing of a mobile phone, but I couldn't draw. I definitely couldn't translate like anything I was looking at and draw it in any sort of meaningful way, and I had to learn all of that. So absolutely, anyone can do it. I honestly believe, like, in the same way I can't play the violin, right? But if I dedicated as much time to playing the violin as I did to learning artwork, then I'd be playing the violin right now, you know. So yeah, I do believe anyone can learn it. You got to want to. I think that's the key to anything. You've got to want to do it, and you've got to have the patience for all the times that it's not working, because that's most of the time. So yeah. Damn, Alex, you in the army would have been a wild choice, but I can see it, dude. I'm a deadeye. I have an amazing shot. You know, that's why I'm so good at paintball, bro. That's why I play for the Mayhem Tigers, bro. So yeah, I was in cadets. I was in army cadets, and I was on the shooting team in army cadets, and that's why I was like, oh, maybe I'll go into the army, because blah. But then, you know, the reality of like, oh, that actually means like killing people and going to war, and I was like, actually, surprisingly, I don't want to do that. Right, I'm just going to turn the mist layers off while I sort these other layers out, because they're between everything, and obviously that ruins everything. Great. Yeah, this is a lot more fun. Yeah. It's a lot more fun, for sure. I just hope I'm able to do it in some capacity, for the rest of my life, because I know it's yeah. Anyway, at 16, I wanted the same. The army HD send people to my high school in an attempt to recruit them, having us do fitness tests and solve puzzles and stuff. They made me believe I was the perfect fit, but my parents didn't want me to join the army and made me apply to film school instead. Now I'm grateful for that. Yeah, for real. Yeah, that's crazy. Yeah. Like, there is an appeal to it, the physical side of it, and like, you know, essentially just like being outdoors. And you know, I used to like the technical side of the weapons. Like, I used to like taking them apart. I used to like the target shooting and the sort of sport aspect of it. And yeah, like learning to read maps and you know, making makeshift shelters and essentially like camping and scouts kind of stuff. It's all really fun. But yeah, obviously the reality of like going to war, obviously not fun at all. And yeah. Yeah, it's got adventure written all over it, and it does seem pretty exciting. Like my cousin, she's going into the army now as like a physio, you know. She did her like physio course and all that kind of stuff, and she's going in as a army physio and sort of rehabilitation person. I don't know what the word is. And yeah, she's loving it for that same reason. Like, she gets to travel all over, and she's helping people recover, and it seems obviously quite meaningful in that way. Obviously the reality of that is maybe that you get sent to a war zone and you've got to help people recover, from having a leg blown off and all that kind of stuff. And that's where the reality of that stuff is really, really hard, and maybe at odds with the reason for doing it in the first place. So yeah. But playing violin, you need to have acoustic hearing to imitate that note. So with drawing, you just have to observe with your eyes and copy it. So it's easier than doing music. I don't know, because I don't play an instrument, so I don't know to what extent that is part of it. But in that way, I think with you're saying you need to be able to imitate the note. Like, you can learn that stuff in the same way that I learnt to see, right? Because when you first start drawing, you don't know how to simplify and interpret the world around you outside of the symbols that you learnt to associate with words. So what I mean is, in the beginning, like everyone, you've learnt language. So you have a symbol in your mind. When I say table, you think of a table. But what you're thinking of is like a symbol for the word table. You think of a flat surface with 4 legs. And most likely you're seeing that flat surface like flat, and you're seeing it with 4 legs. If you even picture anything in your mind, right? And when you start drawing and you start trying to observe the world, what you actually end up doing is not really looking so much at the world and just drawing symbols, drawing these symbols of language that you've learnt through the process of learning language, and like abstracting the world into words. And when you first learn to draw, you have to unlearn that side of your brain, essentially. You need to unlearn the symbols and actually start observing. And that's where people get tripped up with, like, learning something like perspective, right? Because if I say table to you, and you're thinking of like the table, people draw. Hang on, I'm drawing it right now because I can't undo it. Or like, what's the word? Like I can't like redo it because my brain now works in a different way. But so think of it as like a kid's picture book, right? There'd be a picture of a bike, and it will be, like this. Okay, and it says bike. So you learn to associate symbol with word, and you can recognize bike out in the world in all of its orientations, but in your mind, this is how you learn that association. So when you first start drawing and you're actually looking at a bike and drawing, what you'll start doing is you'll look up and you'll start like drawing maybe the wheel or something. But quite quickly, what you're looking at becomes very confusing because there's perspective at play, the orientation of it is not like the symbol, and so on and so forth. So what most people do is they start observing, and then their brain clicks into, wait, I know bike, and it draws symbol for bike. And it will have like a little bit of the perspective of what they're looking at, but it won't be what they're looking at observationally. And for the first like few years of drawing, when you go life drawing or you learn perspective from a book or however you do it, you have to teach your brain to undo the recall of all of the symbols that you've learnt to learn language. And it takes so much effort to undo those processes, Because up until that point where you start taking drawing seriously, like for me, that would have been in my mid-teens, all the words I know are associated with a mental symbol, a mental image for that. And so drawing a person at life drawing and trying to keep, like looking at them, I'm going to open a new thing here. Got me on a rant now. Okay. So, person, right? Let's say I got man. Yeah? Man. Symbol for man. Okay? That's in my head. Then I go to life drawing, right? And I see there's a guy and he's laying down away from me. And I'm going to draw this like semi-properly just so that okay, and he's laying on the floor like this, and this arm up behind his head, okay, underside of his chin, all of that. So he's laying on the floor like this, foreshortened away from me, all of these weird overlaps, like the body being shorter than I expect it to be, and so on and so forth. Now when I go to life drawing, right, I see the beginners. They look at the man lying on the floor like this, and their brain is trying to overtake that and draw this. And so what they end up with is something that is like a hybrid of both of these, where like proportionally these things stay intact, like the length of this versus the length of this. That stays intact, but on here. So now his body's really long, his neck's really long, his head's the same size as it would be down here. This foot is really big, this one's really big, and so on. Because they're fighting this. And so you're saying that when you need to have acoustic hearing to imitate the note, or when you're drawing, you need to learn how to undo this symbol. And I think in the same way with like learning the violin, if I was to pick it up now and be like, meep, 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 and someone was like, okay, that's an A sharp, and that's a G, and this is a C. I might be able to hear that there is a difference between the notes that are being played, but I wouldn't be able to pick out which one is which. But over time, I could learn to hear the difference between an A and a C, or whatever it would be. And so, I guess you're glossing over that initial learning part in the beginning that happens with the instrument. That also happens to happen with drawing. Because I can hear, so I could learn that, and you can see, so you can learn that. You see what I mean? There's the separation. I don't think exists in the way that that you speak about it when it's the difference between like learning the violin and learning drawing. Now I might be mistaken because I've never learned the violin, but I have learnt drawing. And I have learnt it from scratch, from someone that couldn't draw in the beginning. So I think it's entirely possible to do, but it would take time. Like if I was going to learn the violin right now, I wouldn't be playing the violin next year. I'd still be at a very basic stage in a year. I'd be further ahead, obviously, than today, but it would take time. And the same with drawing, like to get to a point where you can observationally draw something that is in front of you in like as much detail as you want to do, or like let's say photographically reproduce it. It takes so long. And lots and lots and lots of practice, and most of that practice, like I said, is fighting your own mind to unlearn from language. If you want to know more about that, if that's interesting to you. There is a book called The Practice and Science of Drawing by Harold Speed. And in that book, he goes into a lot of detail about what I just explained, with a whole history behind it. He talks a lot about like crude early drawings, cave paintings essentially, and this untwinning of language from visual phenomena and symbols. It's very interesting, and that is actually the first book that they had us read at the Atelier at art school. Because well, you can see why it's a very sort of valuable underpinning to understand at that point. It contextualizes, I guess, what you're going to be doing at art school, especially because at the Atelier it's very like rigid, right? You are drawing the same thing every day for months on end, and so if you're doing this and they don't give you the pre-context of like what it is you're trying to do, everyone would just quit. Knowing that art takes mileage and time is both comforting and frustrating. It's a relief to know that you'll get better eventually, but sometimes I did wish there were shortcuts. Yeah, I mean, there are shortcuts though, and you're doing them if you are, seeking out peers to critique your work and work alongside with. If you are looking up tutorials, if you are talking to, professional artists and getting them to review your work, if you are, doing your own study, etc. Like all of those are the shortcuts. If you just like sat at home with a stack of paper and were just drawing what's on your desk over and over and over and over and over again with no input and no like seeking of knowledge, then yeah, that you wouldn't get anywhere doing. Well, you would get somewhere, but it would take you forever to get there, and it would take even longer than it takes now. So like, you are doing the right things already if you're doing anything on that list. Those are the shortcuts, You're shortcutting it by doing all of those things. So it's just, they do shorten it by a lot already, but it's just a very long process, Similarly, if you were learning again to like play the violin, and you just sat in your room with the violin, you'd never listen to any violin music or anything like that. You just tried making sounds on it over and over again with the eventual aim of becoming like, a classical violinist. Then it would take you probably your entire life, and maybe you still wouldn't get there, right? But if you have music lessons, and you hang around with peers who are also learning to play, and you seek out tutorials and like stuff on learning how to play simple bits of music and pieces, and you learn the chords, and maybe you have a book that you learn from. Those are the shortcuts. It's just that complicated that it takes all of that time and effort and so on. So you're already shortcutting it. Drawing is just a constant battle between how well trained your eye is and how well trained your hand is. Yeah, it's a test like anything. It's mostly patience, I think, and the sheer willingness to keep coming back and doing it even if you're not getting the results that you want immediately. Like, if you have the buzz about drawing where you'll do a drawing that you look at, and then 2 days later you look at and you're unhappy with it, and that doesn't make you want to quit, that makes you want to try again, then yeah, you have what it takes to learn anything at that point. It is very difficult to learn stuff that you have no interest in pursuing, regardless of the results. You know, it sucks to suck, but you gotta learn to love that aspect of it. I think. And also, I guess, being not so results driven, right? Really just thinking about it as you're learning something. You just enjoy the process of gradually getting better and learning, and not being so wrapped up in the results of like every single picture being perfect, or like everything needs to be a portfolio piece or anything like that. If you just enjoy the process and the learning, the results will come through your enjoyment of it and your mentality towards it. But I don't think it's possible to be results driven and in learning artwork, and that be a really helpful way of getting you through it. It might work for some people, but more often than not, I see people who are like that burn out and struggle, or just become like super weird, like assholes. So there you go. Okay, so I got about 10 more minutes or so before it end the stream today. I think I will continue on with this tomorrow, at least for the first part of the stream. I will start with this and so on, because I'm enjoying it. It's been fun, and so on. And then I will then probably get onto like the main splash art image that we've been working on for a few streams now. So yeah, the format will be a lot closer to what the stream's usually like. But yeah, I'll continue with this a little bit tomorrow, because it's been very fun. I'm actually quite happy with the pardon me, for what we've managed to get done in 4 hours from scratch. I'm very happy with. I can turn some of the layers off actually. We can have a look at where it all began. Some of these layers are completely flat already, so I can't turn off the texture inside of them, but we can get some idea. Yeah, that's basically all I can turn off, because the rest of the textures are just flat inside of the shapes. But yeah, essentially flat shapes front to back that we made with the custom shape tool, and then building up the textures with the custom shape tool with inside everything. And doing it in a way that enables us to essentially edit the shapes and stuff as we go all along, and work into it. So let me turn these back on. Is that everything? Yeah. So what we'll do tomorrow is like I was doing here, or back here. So some of these shapes I was like painting them out, losing that sort of hard edge from the lasso a little bit. So I'll continue a little bit of that with these like background shapes to sort of quote unquote blur them. And then with these like more foreground things like this was just sort of using that information from the shape here and just painting over on a new layer to just give it a bit of nuance, right? A bit of painterliness, and so on. And so I'll continue to do a little bit of that, breaking up some of the shapes, introducing a little bit of colors. And then at the very end of tomorrow, what I'll do is a bit of grading. So what we'll do is, you know, here there is like a much sort of softer overall kind of division to the light and shadow that gives it this bit more of a sort of moist humidity is a better word there for this. And I think we can achieve that with some grading here, some subtle tweaking of the values, and some of that work that goes on top of the thing at the very end. A little bit of like introducing some curves layers, manipulating the colors and values a little bit to get a bit more of that mood. So look at it upside down actually. So yeah, we'll do that tomorrow and basically finish it up. I'm not intending for this to be like a full painting. It's just a study. So yeah, I'll work on it tomorrow. If you want to watch the stream back from the start, the VOD will be here on Twitch, obviously after the stream, but it won't save it immediately. Sorry, it'll only save it for a couple of weeks. So if you check out the pinned comment, or if you check out on the streaming page the links, the about links, you'll see there's one for YouTube, and I save all of these VODs on YouTube immediately after the stream, and they will be there forever. So if you want to watch back to see like everything we did with these, the custom shape tools, sorry, let's do that up here. Yeah, everything we did with the custom shape tool when it comes to like making these custom shapes, and how we use these shapes to make, for example, obviously the trees, but also these ground textures. We use these in a way to make the ground textures and all of the textures in the image using the custom shape tool, and that. So yeah, you can see how that was done. If that interests you or you want to know, it's on the VOD. So yeah, here we go. I did all of that. I've still got a few minutes. But yeah, thanks everyone for tuning in today. It's been really fun. Yeah, a lot of talking. I've got a slightly like sore throat. But yeah, it was really good. It was a nice first one back for the new year, and yeah, I look forward to tomorrow already. Yeah, cool. Thanks for the follows. Thank you for all the new chatters. It was good to have a conversation with all the new people here. I'm glad you tuned in. Yeah, thanks for all the follows. Thank you for the subs. We got a brand new sub today, so that's exciting. So yeah, cool stuff. I will catch you guys tomorrow. Have a good evening, and yeah, awesome. And good to hear from you as well, Suzanne. It's been years, but I hope you're good. All right, peace out.